The wind curled through Dustwell like it carried old secrets on its back. Sunlight baked the dirt roads until they shimmered, and the clap of hooves echoed down the main street like distant thunder. Colt Maddox reined in his stallion just past the churchyard, where weeds crept over forgotten names. He hadn't meant to stop there, but something in him always did. 12 years had passed since he left this town with little more than a saddle and a promise he couldn't keep. He swung down from his horse, boots hitting the ground with a weight that hadn't been there before. Dustwell looked the same, blistered storefronts, gossip carried on porches, children darting between barrels. But time had worked its slow damage. People turned to look, not with welcome, but with cautious recognition. They remembered him, the wild boy who'd chased cattle and the preacher's daughter, both with the same reckless hunger. Cassidy June. The name lingered like a hymn in his bones. Once, she had been everything soft in a world full of edges. Eyes like rain over wildflower fields, voice that lilted like a fiddle in spring. At 17, she'd loved him with her whole self, and he'd left her with nothing but silence and the ache of absence. He didn't expect to see her. Not really. Ghosts don't return, and girls like Cassidy weren't meant to survive the ruin that follows men like him. But as he stepped deeper into town, drawn toward the distant murmur of a gathering, he felt the old ache tighten in his chest. Voices rose near the square, laughter, jeers, a few hushed remarks that made his boots drag. A wooden platform had been set near the saloon, slapdash and cruel in its purpose. A woman stood atop it, back straight, hands clasped. Her dress hung limp, lace torn at the hem, dust clinging to fabric that had once known Sunday mornings. Around her neck, a crude sign had been strung, for household help $1. Colt stopped. The world tilted. Cassidy. Her face was thinner now, carved by years he hadn't witnessed. Her hair, once the color of wheat before harvest, was pinned up harshly, as if practicality had replaced grace. There was no makeup, no adornment, just the bruising of pride and the weight of being seen like this. She didn't flinch beneath the stares. That, somehow, was worse. Beside her stood Mrs. Whitmore, the wealthy widow who'd turned charity into enterprise. She addressed the crowd with a voice coated in sugar and disdain. "This young lady is of sound body and mild manner. Fallen on misfortune. Starting bid, $1. The silence that followed was more damning than any insult. Eyes drifted, some uncomfortable, others curious. Colt's hands twitched at his sides. He wanted to move, to speak, to tear that damn sign off her chest. But Cassidy hadn't looked at him yet, and he hadn't earned the right to be the one who saved her. An old butcher named Pike raised his hand lazily. "I'll take her." Cassidy didn't blink. Not once. The bidding ended before it began. Colt stood still as the crowd dissolved, pretending they hadn't watched a woman's dignity be measured against a coin. Pike climbed the platform, unfastened the sign, and took Cassidy by the wrist. She walked without resistance, her gaze on the dust ahead of her, never lifting to meet the man watching from the alley's edge. Colt's throat tightened with something ancient and sharp. He followed them from a distance, not out of suspicion, but need. Pike's place was near the edge of town, where the land dipped into rocky fields. Cassidy disappeared behind a slanted door, and Colt waited until the sky went dark and the lanterns came on. He walked back to the inn with long strides, as if moving faster could outrun the memory of her face. But it clung. It always had. Inside, he didn't touch his supper. Just stared at it until it went cold. He'd spent the last decade building something that couldn't be burned down: land, wealth, men who respected him, and enemies who feared him. But it hadn't bought him back the thing he wanted most: the chance to make it right. He hadn't known what happened to her after he left. Rumors flew. Some said she married a man who beat her. Others whispered she'd fled town, only to return broken and shamed. No one told the truth. Dustwell rarely did. It had always been better at burying pain than facing it. A knock at his door snapped him from thought. The innkeeper, a wiry man with too many opinions, leaned in. Word is you were watchin' the auction today. Colt's jaw set. I was passin' by. The man raised a brow. She used to be yours, didn't she? Cassidy June. He didn't answer. The man shrugged. Sad thing that. Town forgets quick, don't it? One day you're the preacher's girl. Next, you're someone's burden. She won't last long under Pike. Man's got no kindness in him. Colt didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window and watched the moon crawl across the roof tiles. When morning came, he saddled his horse and rode without breakfast. The wind was sharp dry. The sort that carried resolve in its teeth. He didn't knock on Pike's door. He waited by the corral, calm but coiled. Pike came out with a cup of coffee and a glare. I want to talk, Colt said. Pike raised a brow. 'Bout what? Horses, Colt said. And trades. What kind of trade? I'll give you 3 geldings. Strong, obedient, well-fed. You'll like 'em. Pike frowned. That don't make sense. You ain't buying her. No, Colt said. Just want to settle a debt. The butcher studied him. Then nodded. Fine. Bring the horses by sundown. Cassidy stepped out from the shed just as Pike turned to go. Her eyes met Colt's for the first time since the square. No gratitude. No fury. Just the ghost of a girl he'd loved and the quiet steel of the woman she'd become. He dismounted slowly, walked a few steps forward, and stopped. You don't owe me your thanks, he said. She folded her arms, voice low and steady. Then why are you here? He hesitated, then said, Because I didn't stop them yesterday. And I should have. She looked away. He left without another word. But that night, under a sky choked with stars, Cassidy June packed what little she owned and walked to a cottage on the edge of Maddox land. She didn't knock, didn't explain. Just lit the hearth and stood by the fire, waiting to remember who she used to be. And for the first time in years, the town had something real to whisper about. Cassidy awoke before dawn, the cottage still cloaked in shadow. She sat up slowly, listening to the wood creak beneath her and the whisper of wind through the cracked window pane. The fire from the night before had died, but its warmth lingered faintly, like a memory that refused to leave. She swung her feet to the floor, bare toes pressing into the cold, and moved to light the stove. Her fingers were stiff, not from cold, but from all the years that had hollowed her. Still, there was a steadiness in her now, quiet and fierce, like something finally unbroken. Outside, she found a pile of chopped wood resting beside the door, neatly stacked. No note. No trace of the man who left it. But she knew. Colt Maddox had not tried to speak to her again. Not with words, at least. But each morning there was a small offering, a bag of coffee beans, a bolt of fabric, a saddle repaired and left hanging. She did not thank him. And he did not ask for thanks. That she could tolerate. The town whispered louder with each passing day. Gossip swirled from porch to porch like dust. That Cassidy June had wormed her way into the richest rancher's land. That he was soft for her. That she was using him. But she no longer flinched at every mention. The shame had already done its worst. What could they possibly take now? She began tending his horses. Not by invitation, but by instinct. The animals needed care, and she needed the rhythm. Brushing down the coats, changing feed, oiling tack. It grounded her, gave her hands something to do while her heart struggled to follow. One afternoon, she turned to find Colt watching her from across the stable. He didn't approach. Just leaned against the frame, arms crossed, hat low over his brow. His silence no longer felt like avoidance. It felt like respect. She didn't offer conversation, but she didn't look away either. That was new. They began exchanging presents more than words. He would mend a broken shutter on the cottage without asking. She'd leave a jar of blackberry preserves on his porch the next morning. When rain came hard and sudden, she found him already in her cottage, building up the fire like it was the most natural thing in the world. She didn't ask why he'd come. He didn't offer an excuse. They simply shared the warmth until the storm passed. Later that evening, over stew and cornbread, she broke the silence. "You left," she said, eyes fixed on the candle's flicker. "And I never knew why." Colt didn't answer at first. He looked down at his bowl, then out the window, as if searching for the words in the dark. "I thought I had to earn something before I could be enough for you," he said finally. "I wanted land, a name, power. Thought if I came back a man worth something, your father couldn't turn me away." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite pain. "He didn't need to turn you away. You'd already gone." Colt nodded once, slowly. "I know." They didn't speak again that night, but something had shifted between them. A wound named, a truth faced, and the quiet afterward was gentler than the one before. Days blurred into weeks. Cassidy planted roses along the fence line of her cottage. The blooms were stubborn, slow to rise, but beautiful in their effort. She started baking again, the scent of cinnamon and clove curling out her chimney and across the land. Children from town wandered by, drawn to the smell, and she began leaving extra loaves near the gate. They disappeared before the dew had time to settle. When word reached Mrs. Whitmore that Cassidy was not only living on Maddox's land but doing so freely, the widow rode into town with her signature blend of perfume and poison. She marched straight to the sheriff's office, demanding Cassidy be returned or compensated. "A woman can't simply walk out on an agreement," she snapped. "What message does that send?" The sheriff, a man whose spine bent easily in strong winds, hesitated. But Colt Maddox stepped in before it became a matter of law. He stood in the center of the square, where the same platform had once humiliated her, and posted a notice written in his own hand. "Cassidy June resides on land lawfully deeded to her. Any attempt to coerce, slander, or remove her will be met with full resistance under the law and under my personal oath." It was signed, sealed, and left to flap in the wind like a battle flag. When Cassidy heard of it, she didn't confront him. She simply dug deeper into the garden, planted the last row of roses, and watched the petals unfold under a sun that didn't seem quite so cruel. That autumn, Dustwell held its annual harvest fair. The whole town gathered, boots stomping over hay bales, fiddles ringing through twilight air. Cassidy hadn't planned to attend. But when she opened her closet and saw the blue fabric Colt had left weeks before, already stitched into a simple dress, something inside her stirred. She walked into the square just as the first dance began. The crowd parted, conversations stilled. The music faltered for a moment, then carried on. Cassidy stood at the edge, heart thudding loud in her ears. Then, slowly, she crossed to Colt, who waited beneath the archway of lanterns. "You remember the steps?" she asked, voice steady. He offered his hand without a word. She took it. They danced, not with grandeur but with memory, with gentleness. Two people circling what was lost and what had been remade. The town watched in quiet awe, no longer with judgment, but with something closer to reverence. Not because they were in love, not yet, but because grace, when shown in full daylight, is a holy thing. As the night wore on, Cassidy sat beside Colt near the edge of the square, watching fireflies blink between the haystacks. Neither spoke. The silence was full now, not hollow. She turned to him, eyes reflecting the flicker of torchlight. "I don't need saving," she said. "Never did." He nodded. "I know. And I'm not yours." "I don't want to own you," he replied. "I just want to know you again. If you'll let me." Cassidy didn't answer. She didn't need to. She stood and walked ahead, slow but sure, her silhouette framed in gold and shadow. After a moment, Colt followed, not beside her, not yet, but just close enough to prove he would. Behind them, the town of Dustwell hummed with music and memory. And ahead, the road wound forward, not into certainty, but into something far more precious. Possibility.